Alright guys, this is Tuesday the 13th and I'm loading one of my examples of a game. This is the Breakout Game where it bounces off your paddle just like Pong, and if it goes off screen it says you lose. If you get them all it says you win. Let's do a little more. If you remember last time, what we did was we added that brick in the middle. It looks kind of gray. It's not different enough to stand out, but that brick in the middle doesn't go away. It's invincible, like often happens in a game like this. That was a weird bounce. There's one that's different, and the way we did that was by using something we need to practice a lot, which is a subclass. We had a class we called Invincible Brick, and then we made it a subclass of Brick, meaning that it inherits all this stuff. We don't have to type it again. We just say what's added or what's changed. So I changed one function to just make it not exist, the die function. Other things will still call it. When a ball bounces off it, it'll still tell us to die, but we just ignore that because now it's empty. And then I changed the show to make it a different color. But like I said, it doesn't really look that different. We got to mess with it. However, we don't want to use the subclasses for no reason. We're doing that as a little practice. I told you to add one subclass to your game of any kind, maybe an object that's different or something like that. But the real reason we're getting into it is the thing we've been talking about. And I posted a couple things last time about sprites. We're going to use the Sprite class that's built into Pygame, and then we're going to make our things subclasses of that. So here's one that I did a little bit last time in class, and we're going to do a little bit more now. So what I did for this was on my objects, the ball, the paddle, and the brick, I added this in parentheses after them. Pygame, that's the module we're getting it from. Sprite is the section, and then Sprite with a capital S is the class. So you got to make sure you get that capitalization right. The Sprite class is now being inherited by all the classes we made, the brick, the paddle, the ball. That doesn't change anything. You can just hit run and keep using them the way you had, and it'll look the same, but now you get all the benefits of the Sprite world. And now we're going to use a couple of them. We're going to use one, which is the image. So you can say, you go to your initialization, you add one line, which is the super. Super means, the parent. It means one level above. So it's going to do the initialization of the sprite, all the stuff that it needs, which we don't have to worry about. It's just, you say super, just like we did in, some of my examples of the subclasses. Then you make one called self.image, and that's when we do the thing that sprites are good at, which is, the whole reason we're getting into this is you can have a picture. Instead of just a little rectangle or circle, you can say, the original sprites were like Mario or something that was like a picture of your guy, and it would change. If he's jumping, it would be a different picture. If he's turned left instead of right, it would be a different picture. And we'll get into those later, the ones that change, but we'll start with some easy stuff. You say self.image, and then you give it a name of a file that you uploaded. So I uploaded two files here. One is called brick.png, and the way I did that was on Replit. I hit the three dots and went to upload file. So the way I found this was I just went into Google Images and typed brick, and then I stole one, and I adjusted it to be the right size. I made it 150 by 40 in order to fit what I want on the screen. But other than that, it was very easy. And later we'll get into, later you don't want just images that you stole from searching on Google. But at first, on a first try, it's fine to mess with them that way. Later we can do some that you make. You could draw one and scan it. You could make one in a Sprite Maker, you could do all kinds of stuff, but at first it's okay to just upload whatever fits. Then you need a rect attribute of your sprite. And actually, we've already done this in the past. The get hitbox function that we've been making in order to test the boundaries of collision, that really is the same thing. So I could have put self.rect equals self.getHitbox. That would have worked. But there's already a built-in one where if you say image.getRect, then it just draws a rectangle around the image, and you don't even have to make your own. So I could end up deleting this, although right now I'm still using the hitbox in some of our collision stuff. So once you have these two, you can do your stuff with a sprite. The cool thing about the rect is that it has a lot of built-in points if you want to manipulate. So for example, the brick, the way we draw it is from the top left. That's when it was a rectangle. You start in the top left and go over and down. And so our X and Y points are representing the top left. So you can just say self.rect.topleft because it has, the 8 points of like top, middle, bottom corner, whatever. They are already named and you can use that. So top left equals XY. On our ball, we use the center, self.rect.center, because that's what our X and Y are representing. We had them drawn as from a radius outside of that. So the point of that is representing the center. And so I just use that as that saves us a step of not having to change our coordinates we had used. By the way, the image for the ball, I googled like a Yoshi egg. I just thought that would be funny because I wanted something that would stand out on a black background. We have a black background, and every time I searched for like a bomb or something, it was black and it wouldn't stand out. So here's what you get if you run this game. As of now, you see the bricks and you see a Yoshi egg, and it's doing exactly the same thing. None of the gameplay has changed. It's the same game. It's bouncing, it's deleting them, it's moving just like it was if you somehow didn't know, if you were blind to this, you would be playing the same game. And it can interact with non-images. Like the paddle is still a rectangle drawn by Pygame. The sides are still a rectangle drawn by Pygame. Oop, that's a little weird. We got to fix that collision where it like went inside the brick and bounced back and forth a little bit. We know what's going on there. We can fix that. We did the same fix in our platformer when we had that same issue. That is what you're working towards, okay? And I'm going to give you some tips. So the easy way is to start with the ones that don't move. Like the bricks, you draw them once and they don't move. That's a lot easier, so I'm going to show you how to do that first. You get your image and rect. Where's the brick? Right here. You get your image and rect, and then you have to use the sprites draw function. Okay, so we have a function called show in our class that was like drawing the rectangle or drawing the circle or whatever our thing was. We're not going to use that anymore because the sprite already has a built-in one called draw to do the image. Okay, so I don't have to delete this. I can keep it here just in case, but I'm not going to use it right now. I'm going to use one called draw, and actually that one is right here. Sprites have another categorization. Instead of being in lists, if you remember our version, we put our stuff in lists. Like when we were running, instead of saying like, oh, I'm going to show this brick and this one and this one and this one and this, I just said, hey, for everyone in the list, show. They have a similar thing in Pygame's sprite function, except instead of using lists, they use something called groups. So I have a little bit of code here to populate that list. I make it, and then I say for the columns and the rows, add one, add one. Okay. In this code, I just changed it to use the thing called group and then add to the group. Instead of the list.append, it's group.add, but it's otherwise exactly the same. Super, super simple. And then whenever you draw them, you don't even have to do the loop thing. You don't even have to say like for whatever in list. You just say group.draw and it knows what you mean. It loops through them and draws each one. Okay. Slightly simpler, but pretty much the same idea. And I have this one outside of the loop. You see that I don't have it in here because the bricks get drawn once and that's it. They don't have to move, so there's no reason to refresh them every frame. Okay, so that's why I say that type is easier. If you're doing one that's stationary, start with that first, because then all you have to do is hit draw once and they're there. Okay, so the next step will be to do one that moves. Like in my version, it's the ball, the Yoshi egg, which has an extra step. Every frame it has to take away the drawing and then draw it in a new spot a little bit over, right? It can't just keep doing them again and again, because then you'd have a streak of Yoshi eggs all over the place that never go away. That requires one extra step, okay? That requires a function called clear. If you remember in our classes, we had one called hide, because the idea is like if you've got something on the screen and you draw another one, then they're going to keep going. But if you hide the one you have, draw a new one in a new spot, it appears to be moving because the frames are fast enough to trick our eyes, but it's not really moving. It's a new one, a new one, a new one, a new one. And sprites have a thing called clear, which does the same job. So you clear and then you update, which does all of the calculation for where the new spot's going to be and everything, and then you draw the new one in the new spot. However, there's one complication. There's one thing that makes it slightly different, which is that in order to do the clear, it doesn't want to draw a solid color. It wants to draw an image. So like we had it drawing in our hide functions, we had it drawing just a solid rectangle on top of what we had. And you could kind of do that, but I wanted to migrate toward the way sprites operate. So the way I did that was I could have just made an image. Like for Space Invaders, we'll probably get an image of stars and like put that on the screen as our background. But you can also just fill a solid color and call it an image. So the way I did that was I added 2 lines. Doesn't make your thing too hard, too complicated or anything. I just added 2 lines at the top that said background image equals pygame.surface of the dimensions, and then background image dot fill with a color. So that says, hey, we're going to draw a rectangle, and then like the little paint bucket in Paint, that fills it with whatever color. And now whenever I do the background, I use background image instead of background color. Really, really simple, but it is one extra step. So right here, when I create the screen, I use the set mode thing. That's where it would have done like, oh, we're gonna make our screen and then we're gonna fill it. But in this case, now I use blit instead to put the background image on there. We've used blit before. When we did text, you used blit to put an image on there. And so you've seen that, or you can copy this line from me. Very similar idea. But now when you have a moving sprite, it has one extra step, which is clear, update, and draw, instead of just drawing it once. So let me run one more time so you can see. It is, right now, we've got several different types of objects on screen. We've got the ones that are drawn with an image and they don't move. We got the one that's drawn with an image and then cleared and redrawn every frame. We've got the paddle, which is a rectangle that is, cleared and redrawn every frame in a slightly different way. We've got the borders, which are just rectangles that are drawn once and they don't need to be bothered. And then now that I'm looking at this, I remember we've got that one invisible brick in the middle that, or invincible, not invisible, that should be different, right? It's a red brick, but it should be different because in our previous game it was that gray one that didn't break. So let's change that, okay? A minute ago I googled white brick, black mortar. Maybe we can steal one of these for our purposes and put it in there. I'm not seeing like a great one. Maybe this, although that's kind of a weird like off-white. What's this guy? Yeah, that's not great. I wanted a black mortar because then it would be the same as our background and we wouldn't have to worry about transparency or anything. Maybe one of these guys. Sure. Now I'm going to go to my folder. I'm going to open. I'm just using Microsoft Paint, which is not amazing, and you guys will do something different on your Chromebooks because obviously you won't have that. I would recommend Pixlr on the Chromebooks, but it's not a huge deal. No, let me just do this, like line, crop, cut, tiny, paste, and then resize to 150 by 40. Let's see if that looks terrible. No, it looks fine. So now I'm going to hit save, and then I'm going to change the name. I'm going to say white brick, and then let's upload that into our game and see if it works. It should work, unless it's like a slightly different type of image file or something that Replit doesn't like. No, not that. Upload white brick, and then let's go to the invincible brick subclass, and we got to say, hey, the picture is going to be a little different. So the initialization is going to be the same except for this, which means I don't want to copy this whole thing. I guess I could, but well, let's do it and then just delete some. I don't need these because these are in the parent one, pretty sure. I mean, you never know, but let's try to be simplified. Let's try this, see if it works. Oh, I didn't like it. Okay, maybe we will keep some of these in there. Oh no, it's not liking it. Oh, because now that I'm using this and it's pointing to this instead of, it's pointing to the parent instead of the grandparent. Now it needs an X and Y. So I gotta put X, Y. It might need to be self.x, self.y. I don't remember. Let's see. No, okay. So that worked, but it's not drawing it with the right image because I forgot to put that in there. Get out of here. Because it's a JPEG. And not a PNG like the other guys. Okay, now that looks horrible. The background isn't quite black. It doesn't fit, but it's doing the job of showing that it's a different thing. And if that didn't break when the other ones do, you would understand. You'd be like, hey, that's a different thing. It looks like a fluorescent ceiling or light and not a white brick, but you know, we'll get there. So making progress, right? I could have just made it a gray rectangle using the Pygame draw, you know, like the one that was in the other file here. That gray looked different from the white bricks, but not different enough. But it would be different enough from this guy, right? We'll figure it out. But the point is, you can change them around, test stuff, mess with it, see what works, and go from there. I think I could probably delete some of these lines, but there's no need to. You can mess around, try it out. Your assignment, actually, not assignment, your assessment. This is going to count as an assessment because it's a big thing. It's like, now we're finally putting the images in our game. One step says add a stationary sprite image. That's the easier one. And then the next step says add one that moves, which involves using that clear function. Now I've got a post I'm going to put on Google Classroom that says all that stuff for the steps. I'm also going to post this video. I'm also going to post this code that you can look at. And also we had that video from the other guy last time where he was doing the target and crosshair game, doing all the exact same stuff that we're doing now, but just another example that you can get inspiration from. So take your time, ask questions. In fact, the very last assignment was to ask questions about this, but take your time, ask questions, do whatever you got to do, and we'll make some progress. Thanks.